Hi everybody, thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome. My name is Andrew Diego and I'm very, very honored to be here to lead this discussion, Getting Frights Right for Everybody, which will be about accessibility in all of its forms in the horror industry. There are a lot of topics that I am completely unqualified to talk about, and this is one of them, and I'm really happy that we have such incredible experts to contribute to this discussion. So if I can just introduce each one, and then I'll have you come up. First we have Maria Pasta Rago, who is a project specialist and assistant producer at Not Scary Farm. Currently oversees casting and training of talent as well as creative development. We also have Caylin Botsford. They are an expert on media accessibility across multiple platforms. They've written and produced closed captions for numerous properties and recorded narration for Amazon Disney Plus titles for accessibility. And last but not least, we have my friend Monica Foletta, who is a deaf performer, scare actor, and an incredible advocate for people in the deaf and hard of hearing community. So please join us, Monica. And we have Pro Bono ASL here as well, providing interpretation for all of us today. So, big welcome to all of you. Make yourselves at home. Thank you all so much for being here. This is really a pleasure. I would love to sort of start by having each of you sort of say a bit more about who you are, what your work entails, and how it intersects with the topic of accessibility. And maybe we'll start with Pasta here at the end.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Pasta. So I've been a haunted professional for the last 18 years. In my field, I have made sure that Scary Farm is ADA compliant, make sure that everybody who works at Scary Farm has the same experience, whether you are hearing, not, or anything else. So I'm part of the creative panel here, so anything that has to do with Scary Farm, I'm here to make sure that everybody gets to enjoy the same thing every time.
Caylin.
So I'm Caylin Botsford. I've got several years of experience working in media accessibility, so that would be closed captioning or audio description. I've also had like a few brief stints in tech, which involved having captioning on social assets and kind of pointing out specific areas of user experience design, which is pretty much accessibility, making sure that font is dynamic and easy to adjust for user to user. I'm also a performer, so that doesn't really tie too much to it, but that is kind of my whole deal.
And Monica.
Hello, I am a scare artist and I've been since 2013, specifically on Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. I've been involved for the past 7 years until COVID kind of blew everything up. But I did start my own Halloween competition, and that's for the deaf community. It's a makeup challenge, so that every day you can win a different prize, and the prize would come from a deaf-owned business. And it's something related to Halloween. So we try to expose different people to different things in the deaf community, and hearing people as well as it relates to horror. So I feel like the horror community needs to understand the deaf community more than, we're not abnormal, we're normal people, and we need to have that connection as well with the horror community. I feel like I've tried to advocate with the deaf community to provide access, whether it's going to different horror places to experience horror, is something we need more of.
Thank you all so much. I'd actually love to start with Monica, because Monica and I, we performed for many years at Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. I played the ringmaster there for many years, and I often marveled at how Monica had a completely different sensory experience than most of us as a performer, and yet she gave us some of the most incredible performances I've ever seen. And I'm curious what the experience is like as a deaf performer in a scare actor community is. How do you approach the work that maybe most of us who come to events either as guests or as performers ourselves aren't even cognizant of?
Oftentimes, as it relates to starting something new in this horror community, we are facing the unknown. We don't know what to expect. So I had friends who said, why don't you audition for the Dark Harbor at Queen's Mary? And I thought to myself, okay, it wouldn't hurt to try. At least, you know, I could do it once and see if they're interested. So I showed up for my audition, and I thought I would go ahead and sign something, and someone was signing to me there. And I thought, okay, well, it should be easier to work with people here because a couple of people signed. But everyone there was so very friendly. I met friends there who knew a little bit of sign, and there were deaf people to be able to help us kind of figure things out. And from year to year, I started to notice an improvement in how deaf people were hired, how they were provided interpreters, how their audition process was accommodated, providing interpreters for the orientation even, or even at the end of the year party, the rap party, interpreters were provided. So it was more inclusive and more friendly for us. We have a long way to go for sure, and that's where I feel that we can do more work in terms of opening up and inviting more people to join the horror community. So I feel like that's a bridge that I'm here to be able to connect the hearing and deaf communities, because we still need so much more in terms of accessibility for the disability so that people don't see it as a problem. We just need access, and it's just something a little bit different than what other people require.
What would you say is, for those people who are also in the deaf or hard of hearing communities that want to become involved in the horror industry, what are some good first steps or first resources that they should be seeking out to know that they're not alone in that space?
When we start thinking about what we want to become, the different characters that we're becoming, so many of the characters don't use their voices to begin with, or, you know, they're described as more of an actor. They are doing things. They don't necessarily have lines or things to say. So that's something where growing up, I was able to copy facial expressions that I saw, different movements. And deaf people, we're very visual. That's a huge strength for us. So sometimes it's like, hey, you might not be able to do this character, but you can potentially do this character. They don't necessarily have lines. You can act it out. You can do what needs to be done to provide that scary experience. Hearing people often don't think about that, and so they deny us off the bat. But when they see us, when we audition, we are able to get these roles, but we can't get the roles if we don't show up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pasta, I'd love to ask, and Caylin as well, as creators and as people who are actively making sure that accessibility is at the forefront of the creative process in your respective industries. Pasta, I'll start with you. At Knott's, for example, how do you and your team approach accessibility and making sure that your guests and your performers have an experience that is solid across that front?
Well, first and foremost, we try to make sure everybody has, can you hear me? Okay. First and foremost, we want to make sure everybody can have the same sort of experience, regardless of it. We want to make sure that when it starts in the creative process, that everybody can enjoy the same experience. When it comes to our associates, that you can see in the back actually here, we have one of our performer talents right there. We want to make sure that they have the same experience as everybody else, that they're enjoying, they can fully admit what we're trying to do. A lot of it has to do with ADA laws. We deal a lot with, when it comes to when we're hiring our associates, it has to make sure that we have the creative, we have all the paper, we have all the, we have the interpreters provided, and then when it comes to making sure that the normal people or anybody else who's enjoying that it is held up to the law, and that we do have the ability to be like, hey, can a wheelchair or an accessibility scooter or can somebody with a mobility issue make through all of our venues? And that's very something we stress on when it starts at the very, very baseline when it comes down to the creative process. It's from the beginning, and whether it is something as simple as it's a sensibility or a sound issue, because we do also do DP testing, and so we make sure that everybody can enjoy it to their full spectrum.
In my own, just on top of the ADA, in my own research about this, I was sort of surprised to learn that, like, the scope of what ADA code is incredibly vast. And we think of it usually as just like a limited physical mobility. The spectrum is huge of what things need to be considered.
Oh, absolutely. Between our technical directors, our directors, and our designers, we are always constantly learning what ADA is. It updates pretty regularly, and we are always constantly trying to stay above it to make sure that everybody can have it, because at some point it might be a 32-inch wide, but then all of a sudden it'll be a 34-inch wide, and we want to make sure that everybody can enjoy whatever we have to offer for everybody, park wide. And ADA doesn't go for mazes or scare zones. It's simply as shows to where it has to do with the DP levels or the light sensitivity. Do we have strobe lights available, making sure we have proper signage and things like that. So it's making sure that the entire company overall is compliant to make sure that everybody can enjoy the thing.
Is there a specific process when it comes to auditioning and hiring your talent, that people that might have disabilities on that front?
Well, we try to be inclusive for everybody. Usually when it comes to people who are auditioning at Scary Farm, my second language is ASL, so usually if they are there if we do not know that they are coming beforehand, they will end up with me and I will end up interpreting for them. When it comes to people during the hiring process, I will be there. I'm there for their training, for everything. If there is some sort of accommodation that we need to do, we are more than willing to accommodate to them, whether it is a mobility accommodation, a sight, a sound, whatever their accommodation they need or whatever they need, we're more than welcome to help with the process.
Fantastic. Caylin, what is the process like for you as a producer, writer, and performer of both closed captioning and audio aids for media?
I can kind of give the bare bones difference between captioning and audio description. Is captioning is kind of very straightforward. You can get a little creative when you're doing descriptions of certain special effects and sound effects that are happening. I mean, if you've seen Stranger Things, I think you know what I'm talking about if you had your closed captioning on, where there's like stepping wetly. They got gross, and I'm proud of them. But with audio description, that one you really do have to take in the actual tone, the feeling, and the story style of what you are working with, because the simplest way to describe it is you are taking a film or an episode of television and turning it into a radio play or an audiobook. And you are utilizing, breaks in between dialogue and certain special effects or musical stings to fill it with written word that later a narrator will record in the booth for audiences who are blind or low vision, so that they are experiencing the exact same film as much as possible as a seeing audience member. It is a very challenging, but also kind of genuinely fun, as a writer, a genuinely fun job. And then outside of that, this is just sort of, once you start paying attention to disability and accessibility, you kind of never stop thinking about it. So you start noticing it in places, and also you will start living in the world looking for ways that it can become more accessible, because that is also an access of it, is that once something is made accessible for one group, it'll usually make things a lot easier for a wider group. That's kind of been, that's it.
It's such a specific niche of what you do. How did you fall into this niche to begin with?
It was genuinely falling into it. A friend of mine was working at the Media Access Group based in Burbank, GBH, and had to move suddenly, and kind of reached out to me saying, I know you're looking for a job. And, what?
Just a little closer.
A little closer. Okay, a friend of mine was working at the Media Access Group in Burbank, GBH, and had to move suddenly, and told me, hey, this opening is here for you if you want it, because you're looking for a job. And I started off as a transcriber, then a captioner, and then I spent several years writing audio description. Truly fell into it.
Is there one that you prefer or that you feel provides more of a challenge to you as a performer?
I think audio description does. I've done some narration also for audio description, which is not the same as voice acting. It's definitely hard to do because it is kind of, have a monotone but don't be boring. Be clear but don't, rush through it. And it is making sure that your voice is not detracting any of the attention from the story that is happening. So your voice can't just suddenly take someone out of the experience. It is kind of matching the vibe, which is sort of how narrators are selected in audio description. We will, as we are writing the scripts, we will start considering who from our usual roster of narrators do we use, who would best suit this medium. So like we have narrators who are specifically for comedy, we have narrators who are specifically for horror, and then we have narrators who are kind of, they can do all of it, but they'll prefer one over the other.
I think it's an interesting kind of line you have to walk, because you're not just trying to convey information like what is on the screen. You are, as you said, trying to provide the same exact dramatic experience. So, because when you go to a haunt, for example, person in a wheelchair maybe can't go through the same claustrophobia hallway that everybody else can, but there needs to be an alternative route that provides that same dramatic experience. So the process of making sure that that still happens must be really interesting.
Yes, it is. You kind of watch through it, and then you pay close attention to, specific sound effects or musical stings, because those are a part of hiding the experience for the audience members. So you work within the spaces in between those, and you can even just let moments breathe, because in horror there is a lot of instances where not much is happening, and the whole point is to build the creeping dread. And you would do that when writing a script in audio description. You would say nothing, because all audience members are going to be sitting there waiting for whatever horrible thing is going to happen.
Yeah. Very cool. Monica, I wanted to ask you, because we've obviously spent so much time working together, when you're on set or when you're performing, and you have to rely on other senses to connect to the audience, to connect to the space that you occupy, what is the physiological experience like for you to navigate such a high intensity, high stimulus space like the Queen Mary's Dark Harbor that provides you with the bullet points and the kind of signposts to navigate it that the rest of us maybe aren't aware of?
I use my eyes more, basically. I try to communicate with my coworkers more, and so if there's something happening and they see something going on, I actually remember one time. So one of the workers, oh man, it just slipped my mind. Dang, I had a perfect example.
Was I involved?
No, ask the question again.
I was just curious, when you're on site and when we're dealing with so much stimulus and there's so much lights and people, how do you sort of make sure that as a performer you're both kind of safe and creatively involved, but you don't have the same sense of the space as the rest of us? You have a completely different sense, which is fantastic. I'm curious what that is like for you.
So yeah, I do like a group. We used to have like a safe space for my group, their area where we would walk. So people would see me as I'm performing on stage, and I would communicate via my eyes with the audio people. So like I do hey, go ahead and start the music, and we would just connect visually, and then the music would start. Or if it was almost time, somebody at the back would raise their hand, make sure that I connected with them, and then the hand would drop and make this little fist, and I would see them off in my peripheral vision, and so I would know, because obviously I'm not relying on any auditory information. So we would develop different, I guess, low-tech ways to communicate with one another on stage. Sometimes it's dark in there, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? I can't see anything. But I know where to look. I know where the visual cues are coming from, so that helps, having those different low-tech methods as I work with different people on some of the different stages, or if someone tells me, hey, go out that way, I make sure that I'm angled in a way that I can see what's going on, because as someone who's visual, that's the way I get information.
Would you have instances where you'd be performing to guests, or you'd see guests coming towards you, and that maybe they expect that you would be a hearing person, and then when they discover that you're not, do you notice a change in how they relate to you, and do you notice that you have to somehow adjust your performance to make them understand what's going on?
I think my characters are very easy to like, you feel creeped out with them immediately, and obviously my characters are not going to be ones that are saying anything to you. So I'm washing the window and I'm doing something in a way that's very foreboding, and so people are already creeped out. So it's very easy for me and for people to understand. People don't often know that I'm deaf. If you start talking to me, I'm just like, oh, well, tell this person over here, tell that person over there. Like, I'm not going to be able to answer you, so.
Yeah. We would just deal with the most insane types of people, though. I mean, it's like, let's not even go there. So when it comes to the design of these events, how much, in terms of the ADA code enforcement, is part of every creative discussion? And who's enforcing those codes once the event is built and is open?
Well, we are. Honestly, what it comes down to is everything is built to ADA. That's what we do is you tell me that this is a 38-inch door that everybody mandatory emergency exits, whether it's, and that's what we build on. It's not a change. It's not a, well, I guess we could go with a 24-inch door. No, and then believe it or not, there are video, there is video of us riding through the mazes on a standard wheelchair with a hard hat on, making sure that we have, that we don't hit anything, there's no clearance, so that people, anybody of any kind can come in through all of our venues. So really, it's us enforcing it because we're trying to be compliant. We want to make sure everybody has the ability to do it. So,
and it incorporates more than just, as we said, physical disability. I mean, ADA includes, I didn't know this, it includes people with major depression, people who are on the spectrum of autism, and how is that, how do you take into account those things when you're designing?
well, we definitely have warnings and triggers outside every single one of our venues if they have a sensitivity thing. So it's like whether there is a traumatic theme or something like that, there will be a sign notated outside, whether it's an extreme issue or things like that. When it comes to our associates, we actually have different things that can happen. We actually have somebody who has their own personal therapy or companion animal, so we have that. So that animal is available backstage for that associate if they ever need at any point, whether it's interpreters or it just depends on what the accommodation is. We, especially at Knott's, are very accommodating to be able to assist because we want everybody to enjoy it, and that's really what the bottom line is.
And I would assume that these code enforcements are pretty standard haunt to haunt. It's just...
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to ADA, ADA is pretty standard across the board, whether it is Knott's, Disney, Universal, Six Flags, everybody has the standard of codes when it comes to it. It just depends on what, like when it comes to providing an interpreter, that is a standard ADA thing. It just depends on how their process they do it.
Right. Yes.
And so I just wanted to add on to that. In addition to being a deaf person who's a performer, it can be very frustrating because we are not fully provided access, for example. Disney doesn't provide access through an ASL interpreters for everything. So they have D23. And so it's really become a struggle and a back and forth where deaf people have had to educate the hearing people who are in charge about what we need. Like, they haven't seen certain types of disabilities. They don't understand from our perspective. They don't know because they're hearing. So it's important for them to know that, you know, we have needs that cannot be ignored, or sometimes they didn't realize, oh, we didn't know. And so it's important for people in those positions of power to learn.
It seems like we just need more education across the board, starting at the very base level in any of these industries as to how we approach and normalize people of all abilities.
I think a lot of that has to come down to is people just not knowing.
Yeah.
Is if I wasn't part of the community or knowing, having ASL as my second language, I would have no idea that this was, I don't want to say it was as big as an issue, but if it was just a noted, you think it would be, like, to me it's common knowledge, but to not everybody it is. Right. So you have to constantly remind people that, like, hey, but if it's not a problem to you, you don't also know it. So when, like, for instance, for me or for we are aware, Caylin, we can help these situations where it comes down to like, hey, these are the things that we know. We can bring it to the attention because we can be the pain in the rear.
Yeah. It kind of really is the sort of thing like, you don't think about it if you don't have to think about it. That kind of seems to be the baseline rule. That is just the general human element about it, where it is we are a communal creature, but we're also very insular. So experiences that are outside of our own, we don't think too much about it. So I think the reason why I know so much about specific areas of media accessibility is because I worked in it. The reason why I have an understanding about, accommodations for people who use mobility aids is because, surprise. And also when it comes to sensory sensitivities, I'm on the autism spectrum, so I'm already aware of like just the general things to keep an eye out, ways to be ready to accommodate and to kind of like draw back. So if someone is having an overwhelming sensation, you can help them out. But if you don't experience that yourself, or you don't intentionally involve yourself in learning about that, you're going to miss it. And it's just involving yourself in it. Also, be ready to be embarrassed, because you'll have good intentions, but you are going to mess up, because that's part of learning, is messing up. And if someone points out to you that you have done a faux pas or you've done something harmful, accept it, learn from it, and build off of it, because you're gonna be embarrassed a lot. So
I will, to that point, I will just quickly share how I embarrassed myself at the very beginning of our Zoom call. It was just Monica and I. Interpreter had not showed up yet. Caylin and Pastor, you weren't there. It was just Monica and I was trying to test, I hate Zoom, I hate all that stuff. I couldn't figure out if my tech was working properly. So what do I type in the chat to Monica? Can you hear me? I was just like, oh God, because I'm so used to, I'm so used to that is just what you do when you're trying to confirm what the hell's going on. And Monica, being the saint she is, she shows me on her phone, it's all good, don't even worry, we have a laugh. But it was just, it was exactly what you just said. And I think one of the things that makes this conversation so exciting is that I think we all need to be reminded about how used to the way we do things is, and how we go to certain spaces or certain events only aware of how we experience it. And it's moments like that that force us to be like, oh, wait a minute, just take a moment, take a breath, see that not everybody is coming from the same place. It doesn't make one better or more valid than the other. It's just that we all come at it from a different angle. And I think this is the spirit that I hope we all bring forward and continue to keep the conversation going. Do you think that there's a lot more work to be done and a lot more conversation to be had across all of these topics?
Yeah. You want to start?
Well, yeah, it is an evolving way of accommodating. Like, people are learning more and more how to make their spaces more accessible to folks, but it's also, the disability community is a very diverse community, and the way someone who has a disability navigates the world is going to be different from someone else who has a disability. And that is just kind of, the work to be done really is just like following the regulations and then getting really creative with it. Just kind of think outside the box and also talk to other members of the disabled community.
I think you just nailed it on the head. It's right there, is that I feel like there's this, like, as somebody who is fully able-bodied, I don't have any sort of physical disability that you can see, and it's one of those things where there's no discussion, is they need to bring other creatives and other people in the room to be like, hey, what would be good for these people? What could help them? What could have them benefit the situation? Versus just being like, hey, just because I'm a hearing person, I'm going to make this judgment, or just because I'm able-bodied, I'm going to make this
Bless you.
Bliss. So it's just one of those things that I feel like a lot of the times anybody who is in this community is left out of the conversation, and there's a lot of people who need to be brought into the conversation and probably could do the community, whether it's the horror community or the entertainment community in general, would probably do a lot of good.
Yeah.
And who those people are, I'll let you know.
But they're everywhere, aren't they?
They
And
are.
Speaking of just within the horror industry, there is a split, the Oregon School for the Deaf. They have something, I believe it's called the
Nightmare Factory. Yes.
And they've been going since
30 years.
30 years, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice to remind people in our community that, you know, while Southern California is such a hub, we have spaces and events like this all over, don't we?
This is actually very exciting. They are coming down to Scary Farm to celebrate their 50th, and there's a chance I'm going up there for their 30th. So yeah, they are coming down to meet. They left, but we had a group of our deaf associates who are here. But yes, we have a group of people. We're going to come celebrate. It's a school that I'm sure Monica's going?
Yes. From OSD, we have some people here.
Oh, great.
Washington School for the Deaf as well.
Oh, I did not know.
So Washington School for the Deaf is now defunct, and so everyone moved over to Oregon School for the Deaf.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, you guys are celebrating your 30th, and we're going to come celebrate you. They're going to come celebrate us. That's so exciting.
Oh, that is fantastic. And is that a completely deaf like hard of hearing deaf performed haunt that they do?
Yeah, it's a school for the deaf where everyone is deaf, all the students are, and the staff as well, and so they'll be doing all the haunts. And the staff encourages the kids to be super creative, think on their own, and come up with the designs of what they're going to do. So it's always so fun to see what they develop, what they come up with for their haunts.
Are there more places like this that across the country that you're aware of that we can either look up or support?
Really, there are so many singular actors in haunts all over the country. I know of one deaf actor in Florida, one in Pennsylvania. So there are people here isolated here and there, but not where there's a group of people. Like here in Southern California, we actually have groups of scare actors that work together.
Oh, fantastic. How did you, Monica, how did you kind of fall into not only wanting to be, and obviously you are, performing, but how did you become such an advocate in this space, and how did you connect the dots between being on stage and also creating more space for people in this community?
So not all deaf people have the ability to use their voice to speak or are able to read lips very well like most people think. I do have some of that ability, and I think there are other people who don't have that same level, but who are motivated and who want to be involved in this community. So I feel like it's my responsibility as someone who is able and who's already made inroads to be able to reach out to folks in the community who are interested and empower deaf folks to be able to become scare actors in the same fashion that I have. And so a lot of people in the deaf community have experienced trauma, being told they can't do things, you can't do that, from hearing people. And so sometimes they're lonely because you're not being able to fulfill your dream or do the things that you want to do. But I want to let hearing and deaf folks know that we're here. And I see coworkers who go to work excited, they're finally able to fulfill their dreams, and it's such a benefit to have deaf folks in that environment.
You're incredibly inspiring, and you always have been, to me, to so many others, and I miss sharing the stage with you, really.
I miss it as well, and I love you too.
It will happen again very soon, I'm sure. Pasta, what can we expect from Knott's upcoming season? Anything you can share with us?
God, things I can share. It's our 50th. Very excited for this year. It's going to be a good year. You know what you can expect? You can expect that there will be an interpreter at every single one of our training orientations and every single one of our scare schools. So everybody has the same. Can I share any secrets? No, not yet. But God, it's going to be a good year. I'm very excited. 50 years is a long time, and we as a company have had a lot to work with for 50 years. So we're still making progress every day, whether it's with ADA, with accommodations, or with anything. We are trying our best, and we are continuously doing our best, and we will continuously do our best to provide everything that we can.
Absolutely. I'm sure we're all very excited to see what you have in store.
I'm excited too.
Yes. I think we have some time certainly for questions if anybody would like to pose one. I wanted to make sure that we carved out some space. So are there any questions for our panelists from anybody? Oh, couple hands. Good, good, good. Yes, ma'am.
Question?
So, hello, my name is Matt. I'm a huge fan of Monica's and have been for many years and encouraging her. So I do have some questions for a couple of you. Job opportunities for deaf folks. Let's say, for example, you have worked doing the closed caption. Have you hired a deaf person to come in and check the captioning before being released? Providing opportunities for not just you as a hearing person, but to work in conjunction with the deaf person, because we're the consumers of the product, making sure that the deaf person who has eyes can say, oh, what does this even mean? No, no, no. We need to change it to something different, providing a deaf perspective.
That is so good. We have had deaf employees in the past, and the regulations, at least for the company that I worked at, it really was, the whole rule was to make sure that it was actually something that would not detract from the experience. So no obvious mistakes. We would have audience members write in to tell us if we messed up, and we would take that into account and adjust our approach and our rules, because a lot of the people in the audience, not the audience, a lot of people in the office working on the captions were hearing, so they would miss stuff. And that kind of circles back to my point where you have to get embarrassed and accept being embarrassed so you can do a better job next time. So when a deaf audience member said, hey, so the captions you gave us were kind of garbage, and we would circle back and rework it. So that was a really good question.
Yes.
I'm in the video game industry, and my experience trying to advocate for accessibility in that industry is that a lot of people get very angry about the extra work that they would be required to do. And I was wondering if any of you have had that experience, and if so, any advice for responding to people who are more reluctant to do that?
I'm sure she has an opinion.
Extra work is something that I always feel like, okay, you have to do a little extra work. We need to get it done. Like, that's something that we as deaf people always have to do extra work. And if you have that mentality, that framing, that it's extra work, then of course it's going to be that negative experience for you. It becomes a whole thing. But if you work in increments, you'll get it done. You'll get to the point where it's that extra work becomes just a part of the process.
I agree. Yeah, we're not calling it extra work. It's just part of the process. Yeah. We're not going to say that this is something else that I need to do. It's now just standard in part of the process, whether it is a continuation or you need a closed caption or something. It is now part of the process. We're not going to call it extra work, because it's not.
That's just one of those phrases that just pisses me off whenever I hear people
Yeah,
use it.
no.
It's
Yeah.
just- yeah.
And yeah, I've come across that a lot, where people who are just their job, like they are, the graphics designers or they are the engineers, they do view it as an extra step to it, but it is kind of reframing it as, this isn't an extra step, this is just a part of creating a finer quality product. And I've encountered a lot of conversations like that, and it has turned into just me kind of digging my heels in the dirt until they see the light.
So it's an ongoing battle.
Yeah, for every like 5 people who go, okay, yeah, sure, there's going to be one in the group who goes, I want to take that next step. That's an extra couple of hours. And it's like, if you streamline the workflow, it's maybe an extra 10.
Instead of having them see the light, just light them on fire.
Light them on fire.
Do those people, would you say sometimes on average they see the teachable moment of it and they realize
They
their privilege?
absolutely see the teachable moment after a certain amount of time.
Yeah, it's not an after-school special, but eventually they figure it out.
Yeah. Good.
Any other questions? Yes, in the back?
This is kind of directed towards non-scary farm, but with Universal changing their assistance policy for getting services for people with not visual disabilities, but for instance, when they were living out, they pass out in line and have mental problems. It's been sort
Oh,
all
okay.
these other things for
Okay.
getting services.
I understand. I'm not exactly necessarily up to date on the universal policy. I don't work for that company, so I'm not necessarily 100% sure on it. I will say with the NOTS policy, we do have different type of, I will call them plan your days or gap passes or accessibility passes that are available. There's 3 up to at the current time that you can have, whether it is you have like a plan your day, which is like a scheduled boarding pass. So it's like if the line, let's say at a maze is 45 minutes, we'll be like, hey, here's your 45-minute block. You don't have to wait in line, but here's your 45-minute time. Then you can go to your next attraction, and it pretty much plans your entire day out for you. I don't believe that we are going to have something. I don't think we're updating anything at the time. Whether that changes or not, I can't actually guarantee that that will change. But I do know there are 3 different types of passes available right now for any sort of accommodations, whether it's as simple as you mark out your time, whether it's as simple as you have a guided wristband, so everybody in your party, if somebody can come or somebody cannot come on an accommodation. So it really is all going to depend on what your accommodation is going to need for your viewing pleasure.
Information on staff, because a lot of times trying to get services for the disabled, it's almost a fight trying to explain your disability and they're questioning you and they're not medically, educated in that realm, and it deters you from having a good time. And
Absolutely.
Educating the people who are in charge of that and their services is something that we should push for to accommodate their guests.
Rather than reinforcing stigma and otherism.
And making you feel embarrassed to ask
Right.
for services.
Right. Well, most of the time they should just be asking to be able to accommodate you. They shouldn't be pressuring you for any sort of information that you don't feel sharing, which is a big
Especially
thing.
not having a visual of you, like,
Right.
or a walking device. They almost pressure you into renting one or paying money to have those services available.
Too often I feel like people with disabilities of any kind are made to feel like extra work for those whose job it is to accommodate.
Well, I mean, I'm also a park trainer, so to go completely side note, we shouldn't be asking those questions because it's none of our business. We should be able to provide the assistance that is needed for those people, is really what it comes down to. They're just trying to get you the best accessible that you need. So whether it is a plan your day or a gap pass or whatever you need, at the end of the day, all I want you is to enjoy your time here at Knott's Berry Farm, and that is what I need you to do. And whatever I can do to help accommodate that, I will do in my power. Whether I don't need to know what your accommodation is, because nobody needs to know what their accommodation is. You don't know mine, I don't know theirs, nobody needs to know.
Totally. Monica.
I believe that all theme parks should have a day where we have like disability, whether it's visible or not, that day where we can all have, all the workers know what to do with people who show up who are disabled, some type of sensitivity where they are taught how to approach a wider audience, whether it be providing the measurements that are accessible to different mobility devices, providing the training, providing for, if you have a service dog, you're able to come in and people can become more aware and comfortable with some of the accommodations that we have. And just for workers and folks in general to become more aware. If theme parks had those types of days every month where we could go, that would be so much fun. Everyone could be together. We could maybe do it on a weekly basis, but just a day where all of these accommodations are just provided for a period, point blank.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions out here? Yes.
So one of the problems that I'll have, I'm going to say one of the challenges, is I'll have that person, and it is not like it's watch Sandy music. But then when I'm casting them, I'm having to use edges like, oh, that person is in a sensory issue, or oh, you have anxiety about this particular thing, or oh, you're stroking. Like, is there a better way for me to basically say, hey, tell me what you need, without being like, hey, tell me what you need?
What language is best to use?
As somebody who casts over like 900 people for an event, the best thing I can say is ask the question. I hate to, I mean, that's a simple, when it comes to our wardrobe fittings and when it comes to our casting and things like that, we ask people the questions, how does this make you feel? Can you wear latex? Can you wear silicone? Can you handle makeup? Can you wear a skin tight bodysuit? We have those questions all at the time at our wardrobe fitting, and then like this is before casting, so like let's just say I cast you in a character and all of a sudden you're in a latex bodysuit and you're like, hey, I can't wear this because I have sensory issues. That will get kicked back to me and my partner, and then all of a sudden we'll be like, hey, yeah, this isn't going to work, and we'll recast you to something that's available to you. We're very lucky that we have so many positions and so many offerings. I understand that sometimes in smaller fonts that you might not necessarily have that ability, but we also, like for people who, we always ask the question what is your preferred, how do you like to be preferred as a person? Are you, whatever your preference is, we make sure that you are accommodated within that, and so you can be comfortable, because really ultimately at the end of the day it's all about comfortability. Is we want people to make sure that they are able to perform in the best role. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you wear. It simply has to do with, can you perform it? You could be in a trash bag and you can still be scary. I honestly truly believe that is, I can teach anybody to scare in a trash bag. So when it comes down to it is, I just want you to be comfortable and so that you have all of your needs met. And it's something, if it's something as simple as, hey, I cannot wear this latex max, I need to wear makeup. Okay, then let's talk about it and have a conversation. If I have the makeup slot available, sure. So, but having those conversations at the front and at the beginning will definitely save you in the back end, because I can guarantee there are going to be some emails in my inbox when I get back to work that are going to be like, hey, can we accommodate? Yeah, and that's all it is. It's an accommodation. Welcome.
Anything else from anybody?
There was somebody else over here I saw had their hand up. Yes.
Would you mind standing up and just maybe taking a few steps closer?
And I want you to think back on the next part, because what we're doing now is we're incorporating accommodations into our TPI initiative, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as you do that, you talk about equity and fairness. So instead of calling anybody out, what we try to do is try to understand that everyone needs to be the best in every aspect. So that's how we try to talk about accommodate folks, and we actually have the accommodation manager. So the right information you don't need to know about, you just need to understand that something is an accommodation, and they tell us what that accommodation is. So both in IT and anything they do. It's a little different than what we do right now, but I think the construction is different than that. It makes everybody feel equal in terms of how they do this.
I think using that word accommodation is so important because it immediately puts into our collective consciousness the sense of there being an entity that is there to make us feel safe and seen and heard and taken care of, rather than it be there's a crisis management center or something that I have to seek out because there's a problem. I think that's a very, very subtle shift in language, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah, there's another word we use, belonging.
Belonging.
So, and everybody that goes that doesn't belong down,
Absolutely.
I just muttered diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to myself, but it was someone in a past HR seminar I attended. It was described that diversity is inviting everyone to the party. Equity is everyone is allowed to dance on the dance floor, and inclusion is everyone has a chance to take over the playlist, and belonging is no one is afraid to take over the playlist.
I love that.
Yeah, it stuck with me. Good HR seminar.
That's really great, actually. I'm going to have you write that down.
Send that email, please.
Yeah. I mean, I try to remember, like, especially in a room like this, we were all the people who were made fun of in high school, or we were all the people who had some other label attached to us. And I think in creative spaces especially, it's important that we lead from the place of this is an inclusive, safe journey for all of us to be on. And especially when it comes to accessibility, I think obviously there's a lot more work to be done, but it's pretty great to see the progress that's been made so far. And yeah.
That's all we can do is progress. The first time I ever met Monica, she said something that I was like, why don't we do that? And that's something that I'm going to pitch, is to have it, have an accessibility night at one of our events, whether it's summer night, Scary Farm, Boysenberry. That would be something that we could just plug into our operational calendar and be like, so it's normal for everybody else.
How would that require a lot of adjustment on the end of operations, or how would that look?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, considering depending on what season it is, there is up to 15 different shows, so we need 15 different interpreters, depending on what we need, and just park needs, really. But we work with plenty of different associates, with whether it's Pro Bono or ASL or whoever we need to get those. We just have to make sure everybody's on the same page. So really what it comes down to is making sure, this is going to sound ridiculous, the hearing people are in tune with what everybody else needs, and then they just show up. Because that's what ultimately it is, hey, as long as you have the information on paper.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just you got to get everybody on the same page, and it's been so long. It's been a long time coming that people need to move forward with these sort of things.
And is that a night that would be happening this coming season, or is it in the works for future?
It is in the works of the process. I can't guarantee it's going to happen this season, the 50th, especially for Scary Farm. I cannot guarantee anything will happen, except we will open it.
It's just so important. That's a discussion that's actively happening.
It'll happen. It will happen. The email, you don't want to know.
No, I don't. I'm good. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody before I ask for some final thoughts from folks? No? Oh, yes.
This has nothing to do with the entertainment aspect, but I'm a speech therapist, and I've worked with the deaf population, and we accommodated our deaf students when we had an interpreter present. And I know speech therapy has a negative stigma with a lot of the deaf community, because old school speech therapists would try to get the deaf community to speak, talk. That's a no-no. So, that was where I learned how to be more of an advocate for the deaf community by providing language access for my students. So I guess my question is, how can I continue to learn how to be a better advocate for just anyone with disabilities?
So as a speech therapist, how can you advocate for the needs of others? And that's a very good question. Monica, is that a question you'd like to field?
So what's super important is exposing yourself and your students to many others in the deaf community, deaf adults who are working in different industries. Maybe they might be in music, some might be in horror, some might be in, baseball. I mean, there's a variety of deaf adults doing different things. So providing the opportunity and exposure for your deaf kids to see that when they grow up, they can do anything that they want to do if they have that motivation. And that's where a lot of hearing adults are unaware. They don't even know deaf people. So it's like, I don't know anyone deaf. How can I show my deaf kids a role model? You can't be that role model. We need to provide those role models for those deaf kids, as finding other deaf adults and encouraging them that you can do, fun little group chats. You can do like some type of acting, some type of like fireside dances, and creativity is very important, and just have fun with it.
Possibilities are endless, aren't they? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I wanted to add something. With technology that we have, use the technology to expose students. You can pull up your phone and look for a hashtag or do a Google search and show your deaf kids other deaf folks. You can actually have physical socialization with other deaf folks in the community. Get yourself involved in the deaf community, and it's not just, this is my job and I do this from 9 to 3 every day and then I go home. Some hearing people who work in deaf industries, once they're off the job, once they clock out, they're done for the day. But it's important to understand that you work within a deaf community that runs 365, 24/7, and so once you're able to socialize yourself better, you can include that with your students. and continue that. Don't stop. It never ends. It's an ongoing thing.
Please,
That's
Botsford.
it. All I said was, I said you never really end. It's a continuous thing, like the work is never done.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really great kind of thought to end on. If there are no more questions, I would love for everyone to join me in thanking our incredible panelists for the conversation. I'm really looking forward to everything that comes at Knott's and your work, Caylin and Monica. I know we'll get to work together again soon, so yes.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes, truly. Thank you so much.
Yeah,